authors, I'm Joanne Morrell, children's and young adult fiction writer and author of short non-fiction for authors. Thanks for joining me for the Hybrid Author podcast, sharing interviews from industry professionals to help you forge a career as a hybrid author, both independently and traditionally publishing your books. You can get the show notes for each episode and sign up for your free author pass over at the Hybrid Author website to discover your writing process, get tips on how to publish productively, and get comfortable promoting your books at www.hybridauthor.com.au. Let's crack on with the episode. Hello, authors! I hope you're all keeping well in whatever part of the world you reside and listen to the podcast in. Today's interview is with children's fiction and scriptwriter Kathryn Lefroy. And I chat to Kathryn about the process after you've written a screenplay, networking with the right people, not to be missed events in the film industry, screenwriting etiquette, living in Australia and working in LA, pitching streaming services, Kathryn's work, and much more. So in my author adventure this week, I have been, if you've seen on social media, I've been super excited to use my Square reader. So the little Square reader that I bought to take direct sales. I went up to a local library and a librarian had a credit card, which she purchased my books with. And it wasn't that hard to set the thing up. It configured pretty quickly with my phone. And I felt a bit nervous going up there thinking, oh gosh, I just said, oh, you're the guinea pig with this new machine. Went through pretty swiftly and I was able to send her a receipt, and you can customize all the items and amounts and things like that in there. So it's pretty seamless for a business, and it's quite exciting that we have this technology available to us. And regardless of, whether you're the publisher of your own work, I'm sure as an author, you've got your own author copies. I highly recommend having it as part of, your writing and author business. So yeah, that was surreal. I was keen to note that how much I actually got charged for the transaction, and it was about 80 cents, which seems like a lot, I guess, but yeah, in hindsight, it's not too bad either. And do you know what? I don't mind paying 80 cents off a purchase for the swiftness as well. It's like, for the convenience, for the fastness, the speediness of it all is great. So I have to now see whether my bank account is sort of set up. So I'm recording this. If you can hear, there's sirens in the background. I'm recording this in my car again, but I'm actually at town about 10-15 minutes from where I reside at the moment, because I've got an appointment that I'm about to head into before sort of editing this and uploading the podcast, just so you can hear the background noise. Nice sunny day here in Perth, very, very lovely. So a bit more deep thought on last week. I was talking about my author adventure. I was talking about obviously getting back into writing. At the library, book week kicked off this week as well, so my work at the library was kind of interrupted by kids coming in from schools into the local libraries to get author talks, and I happen to know the author that was at my local library. Shout out Kitty Black. So it was a real treat to actually watch her in action, give her author talk to the kids, and just to see what tactics she used and what she'd done. And it was so funny and informative, and she was just fantastic. So even though my writing kind of got stalled, it was lovely to see her work her magic as well. But yeah, back to last week's author adventure, when I was talking about me working on my women's fiction, and I've got a really bad habit of rereading certain paragraphs and sentences, going over them before moving on to the next line and this is more like a perfectionism thing, to make sure it flows, the writing's tight. But as I said, I'm not quite there in my manuscript. That's not really what I should be doing at this point. So spending a lot of time felt like a procrastination. I think later on that day, it came to procrastination came up in a conversation, and someone brought it to my attention that procrastination is just another fear. As authors, are we procrastinating because underneath we have some underlying fear which we're not actually aware of about our work. What happens if we get to the end of our work? Why are we not letting ourselves get to the end of our work by procrastinating? What do we think is going to happen? What are we scared of what's going to happen? Being judged is probably one that comes to mind. But for yourself, if you find yourself doing that procrastination act at all and you're writing this next week or whenever, I challenge you to sort of stop and recognize it and wonder, why are you doing it? Why are you holding yourself back? Is it, do you have a confidence fear? Are you worried about how your life's going to change after writing a book? Or if it's not, are you just simply lacking the motivation to get the work done? Are you feeling like a fraud? Wondering, self-doubt, wondering if you're ever going to make it as an author, that type of thing. So in fitting with this in mind, my non-fiction book, Author Fears and How to Overcome Them, has a lot of fears that presents that I have actually dealt with through authorship that came up that I wasn't really aware of, but you can only, because I'd never written a book before, I'd never done this sort of type of work. So yeah, like these things arise and you don't actually recognize them. But when you do, you can recognize them for what they are and, set to work about quieting and soothing those fears within yourself. So one of them is being judged by others. That used to be a massive fear of mine. And in some way it still is, but it feels a little bit less because I know what I want. I know what I want as a career, and I can't let the thoughts of others get in the way. So the author fear being judged by others. Judged means to form a judgment or opinion on someone. So in the book I've written, you might overcome this fear, which there's another couple of sections in the book that I briefly touch upon about, people will laugh at me and looking stupid. So I mention those as well. But unfortunately in this business, being judged is unavoidable in any creative outlet for that matter. Your work is created and perceived by the public. People who engage with it they are going to form an opinion. These judgments can be good or bad or both. Recently, I was watching the women's football, the Matildas, and I got quite into it. I haven't really watched it before. And, I caught myself, the things I was sort of shouting at the TV or saying about these girls who are bloody trying their heart out. So easy for us at home to be sitting on our bum and judging them. Come on, pick your game up. She's not doing her best. To judge them from afar, you're always going to have an opinion, and opinions, as I said, can be both good and bad, but you within yourself need to be fine with that and just recognize that others will have an opinion. That doesn't necessarily mean their opinion is gospel if it isn't something that you agree with or whatnot. You have the way you feel about something and other people have the way they feel too. There was an example that I had put in my Author Fears and How to Overcome Them book on the being judged section about a conversation that was had on Twitter. It was a well-known young adult author, and they'd received a review of their novel from an adult who dubbed their book too juvenile, and this annoyed the author as the book is for a young audience. So they were concerned that this review might deter younger readers from wanting to read the book, as an adult had dubbed it juvenile. So around young adult age, you want to be grown up, you want to be seen as probably older than you are. Well, some kids do anyway. So having an adult review it and say it's sort of, babyish might be off-putting. So, sometimes you will be judged unfairly, your work, your books, and not necessarily by your target audience, the right people. But if you go into this business knowing and expecting to be judged and embracing the judgments, work through them and move on and write some more. Everyone has their own opinion, everyone has different tastes, and keep writing. The other fear that coincides with being judged is looking stupid. It's just another sort of fear, like looking stupid, foolish, being silly or stupid. I used to feel like I was going to be anxious, or I often become anxious around thinking I'm going to make a fool of myself in front of people. Again, this is something I'm less concerned of these days because confidence has kind of overcome this. But and I think though, if I did make myself look silly, I'd just laugh it off or make a joke about it, maybe be embarrassed later. I always remind myself when I do workshops or speak, I trust the attendees are intelligent and non-judgmental people who understand how difficult it is to stand up in front of a bunch of people and talk, let alone teach some people. So I think about how I feel when I watch someone present, and if I spot they're nervous, I feel complete compassion towards them. Most importantly, I don't judge them for it. People are understanding. I know my enthusiasm for what I'm speaking about or teaching outweighs any worries of looking stupid. And I think it's all about just being prepared, and if you're organised with your session, talking about standing up in front of people, if you feel like you're going to be foolish, you're going to conduct your practice run through, and you'll feel confident about how the workshop will progress, and being prepared for mishaps such as technology faults will all help extinguish feelings like you are going to look stupid. And then I say, what the hell is looking stupid anyway? Is it mumbling, or is it forgetting what you're going to say? Have items in place like prompt cards. It's okay to use aids when you're first starting out. In fact, I encourage them. Whatever's going to help make you a better, more confident speaker and at ease. I say, remember, do what you've got to do to quiet your mind and build confidence in the beginning. The better you become, the fewer aids you will need as you go on. That age-old saying, practice makes perfect, is exactly how to overcome these author fears that may arise within. So the other one is the last one that I'm going to just read out, is people will laugh at me. Author fear, people will laugh at me, and mock means to attack with ridicule, and you can overcome this as an author. Sometimes you might find you are invited to present. During my studies at university, as part of a presentations unit I was undertaking about speaking publicly, I had to stand up and talk about an idea. I spoke about the book I'd published in my first year of study. I was so nervous. I remember feeling really nervous about what people would think of me, and I was worried, and what people would think of me in the self-published book I held in my hands, but I did it anyway. I respectfully remember the response and hold it in my mind to revisit any time this fear rears its ugly head. People were genuinely interested, and a few students even made a point of coming up to me afterwards, telling me they were writers too, which was amazing. So rather than sort of backlash that I was expecting, there was actually the opposite. It was more of an excitement, inspiring atmosphere that proceeded from me getting up and sharing myself and my work. So not only did people not laugh at me, they connected with me. You have to put yourself out there to face your fear and make the realization fear is nothing more than false evidence appearing real, if you've ever heard of that term before. It's in your head. So when it comes to when you're doing your writing, and if you notice you're procrastinating, there is a big long list of procrastination techniques out there. These could look like, playing with your phone, getting up and going to the toilet, making yourself another cup of tea, letting the cat out, going to do the dishes, even my procrastination, which is rereading over your work. All these things can be because of an underlying fear which you are concerned about. So always I encourage to be aware of your processes, write out any fears that you have. Also with procrastinating, if you notice you're doing this, why are you doing this? Try and get to the bottom of it so you can see it for what it is, and in the long run it's going to save you time. I'm starting to do that again, because sometimes it can be a habit. I'm not going to do that because I'll spend the whole of my writing session doing that and I'll have not gotten ahead. Then you can nip that in the bud and just keep going. How I've tackled my procrastination of rereading over is I actually forced myself, I felt myself force myself. I've moved that paragraph up on the screen so I can't see it anymore, and then just not done it, not gone back to do it. So if you love the podcast or any of the episodes has helped you further in your author career, you can now pay it forward by buying me a coffee over at buymeacoffee.com/thehybridauthor. Let's all support each other.
Kathryn Lefroy writes screenplays for film and TV, novels and articles about technology for some of the world's top brands. Her family feature film, Whale Shark Jack, is shooting on location in Exmouth later this year. She's currently developing a number of other film and TV projects with production companies across the USA, UK, Australia, and India. Her debut novel, Alex and the Alpacas Save the World, was shortlisted for the prestigious Premier's Literary Award, and the sequel was released in 2022 to critical acclaim. She has a first-class honours degree in art history, a PhD in business, and and is a graduate of the UCLA Theatre, Film and Television's Professional Screenwriting Program. She not so secretly wishes she lived in a dance movie. Don't we all, Kathryn? Welcome to the Hybrid Author podcast.
Thank you. And I think if you don't wish you lived in a dance movie, you're probably doing something wrong with your life, to be honest.
I had to laugh when I read that. I was like, yes, we do. Well, can you tell us how you got into the screenwriting gig and then become a children's author?
Sure. So the children's author, well, no, actually, I was going to say the children's author bit came first, but to be honest, I was kind of dabbling in both of them simultaneously. But with both of them, I just started doing it. So I just basically sat my butt down and started to write. So when I first started writing both screen and books, I hadn't had any sort of like formal training or anything. Like I just thought, this is something I would like to do, and did it. And it was kind of the best way of doing it, I think, because I didn't know what I didn't know. So, sometimes when you're confronted with all this stuff you don't know about something and it becomes too overwhelming and you're like, I don't know how to do that, so I can't do it. So I just started doing it. I was like, this is great. I'm having so much fun. This is amazing. And then, of course, I wrote like the first draft of a book or the first draft of a screenplay. And then I was like, this is cool. Great. I've done that. And then I started researching and learning about how to actually write a screenplay or how to write a book. And then I was like, oh, wow.
It ruins it.
Wow. Yeah. I don't know anything. But because I had, these documents, essentially, it's a lot easier to edit something than it is to like create net new content. So yeah, I just muddled through basically. And I'm always learning. I mean, as you know, with writing particularly, you're always learning. So it's not something that, you do and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, boom, I'm a great screenwriter now. It's like constantly evolving.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I don't think that answers the question of how did I break into it per se.
Just how you had a passion. So yeah.
No, it was, and this notion of like breaking into something, I've been writing professionally now for over a decade, and it's, it's a long slog, and people are like, overnight success, and you're like, yeah, the overnight success that took over a decade. Sure, let's run with that.
Yes, I've seen many stories of those. But yeah, I hear what you're saying, because when I had story ideas and felt creative and inspired and wrote them down and things, and then when I started a writing degree, I just feel that really shackled me a bit, actually. And now it's hard to just sit down and sort of free flow without all these sort of rules and regulations coming into place, and not higher power but ways of doing things sort of locking in the writing, which killed it a little bit for me, I think.
100%. Yeah. And it's still something I struggle with a little bit sometimes, like starting a new project, because I know how much work is going to go into it, and I know where the struggles are. And so you have to be, I have to be really ready to start something new, knowing how long it's going to take and knowing how many rewrites it's going to be. You've got a very strong constitution, shall we say.
Yeah, like push against that procrastination.
Totally. Yeah.
Well, today's topic is on that word you hate, breaking into screenwriting. So I think that term just comes around as in, someone's maybe got an idea for a screenplay, or they've written one or had a bash at writing one. And it's kind of like, is there steps that they should take to get into the industry?
Yeah.
What should they do with their screenplay type of thing? So I suppose I've always heard with the screenwriting, and I have to say with anything, especially in Australia, it's who you know. So do you have to be in the networking space to meet these people who you know to get you into the screenwriting sphere, or is it just a case of having written something that's amazing and you've either secured an agent or going down somewhere, or is it all of the above?
Mm-hmm. Sure. Look, there are obviously exceptions to every rule, but I would say it's a bit of all of the above. With screenwriting particularly, okay, the difference between writing screenplays and writing novels is when you write a novel, what you have written is the finished product. Okay, so that, assuming you're lucky enough to get published, that thing that you have written, it's yours, like it's all you. Whereas a screenplay, unless you're a writer, director, or even if you are a writer, director, if you're a screenwriter, it's a roadmap for someone else to bring that to life. And so 100% you are incredibly reliant on other people to bring that story to life. So you couldn't just write a screenplay and then like self-publish the screenplay kind of thing. I mean, you could, but then it's not a film. Yep. So the biggest difference between that is yes, in screenwriting, 100% you have to have like a community, and you have to know other people, and you have to know the right sorts of people to get noticed. Now, there are different ways of doing that, of course. You absolutely can write a shit hot screenplay and have like a producer read it, and you could be catapulted to overnight success that way. You could enter it into a competition and get catapulted to success that way. The same token, you could write a shit hot screenplay, and if the right person doesn't read it, then it's not going to go anywhere. Okay. And unless you're also the filmmaker who's going to bring that to life. But I'm not a filmmaker. So yeah, so I very much rely on other people to take my screenplays to, you know, producers and directors and that sort of thing.
So when you write a screenplay, what's the process you go through? Do you have an agent, or do you have someone to bounce ideas off? Do you find the right person for it? And then what happens after that?
Yeah, so when I was starting out, I would just write things that I wanted to write, that I was incredibly passionate about. Because again, I mean, if, you know, any of the listeners out there, if you've written novels or anything really, you know that it's not a one and done thing. Like, you kind of write something, you're like, cool, that's done, I can move on to the next thing. So, you know, a screenplay, on average in Australia, a screenplay takes from inception to production about 7 years. That's kind of the average time.
Gosh, that's worse than publishing.
Yeah, right. I know. But that's also because there are so many other steps involved in creating a film, right? There are so many people involved in it. Sorry, when I was just starting out, I just wrote what I wanted to write, because like at that point, like really you're learning how to write a screenplay, because the structure is very different. You're learning the mechanics of it, and you're also learning how to tell a story for the screen. So you want to do something that you know that you can rewrite 50 million times. Since, you know, I've had a little bit of success with my screenwriting, I now get people sort of coming to me and asking me to write certain stories that are not necessarily my creation. So, you know, it can range from someone being like, I've got like a kernel of an idea, can you like turn that into a story for me, to I've got this kind of like quite developed 3-act structure, or I've got this like quite developed TV show, can you help me turn that into something that will translate to the screen properly? So I say these days I'm probably doing like 50% of my own stuff and 50% work that has been sort of other people's ideas. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. And who are these right people you need to be around? Is it is it directors? Is it producers? I don't know. Is it the doorman?
So yeah. Oh, you know, I mean, it could be the doorman. The doorman could be like so-and-so, you know, Steven Spielberg's cousin or something. Producers are really, really useful to know, because producers are the people that will make the film happen. Okay. So they're the ones who will get the money, who have the relationships with the funding bodies, who essentially are building this beast, you know? So producers are very, very handy. Getting to know like really good producers is incredibly useful, and it can be quite hard work. And also you don't want to be that person who is like annoying.
Yeah.
You know? So you just want to be a bit cool as well. So it's like, you know, I find I meet people, and if I get along with them, then I will happily think about working on projects with them. But, you know, I've got producers that I've known for years and years and years that I'm only just starting to, like, we're only just starting to talk about working on projects together, you know, because we know that we're a good fit and that we can work on that. Directors as well, like if you can have a director attached to your project, that's also really good. Obviously, a director with more experience it's a better draw card. Similarly with producers, and then the other piece, you know, there are two other pieces of the puzzle. One of them is like the money side, and then the other one is like the actor side. So if you are Chris Hemsworth's cousin and you can get Chris Hemsworth signed onto your project, you have a much better chance of getting it greenlit for production, which means people will give money to get the film made. So I would say more so in screenwriting than books, it is a lot of who you know.
Yeah. I really just think across the board it is like that in Australia. Even for jobs I've gone from,
100%.
It just feels 100%. That way, doesn't it?
But saying all of this, you still need to be a really good screenwriter, and you need to be a really good person to work with. So with screenwriting particularly, because it's such a collaborative effort, you don't want to be that person who's like super precious about your ideas and refuses to change anything, because you will more so than in novels, you will have to change things depending on what the director wants, what the producer wants, what the investors want, and then what the actor wants. So, it's this kind of weird thing where at the start of the project, I'm like literally the most important person in a film, because I'm the one creating this story. And then at a certain point, there's this like weird tipping point where all of a sudden the writer becomes like literally the least important person in the room. And it's a bit like, I'm not ashamed to say it's like a little bit of a kind of ego deflation, because this thing that you worked so hard on all of a sudden is it's taken out of your hands, and it gets this life of its own, basically. And it's, there's going to be 50 people working on this story, or maybe more. And so all of a sudden you're like, oh, wow, that thing that I spent X number of years working on is just like that. I don't even know what's happening with it anymore. So it is a peculiar feeling, but it's also really exciting because, like, it's just cool to think that so many people are working to bring your story to life.
Yeah, I was just going to say, is that why you got into books, so you can hang on to what you said?
Yeah.
From beginning to end.
Well, I actually had my books sort of published early. Like I sort of wrote books first because it felt a little bit more, I was dabbling in screenwriting, but the books felt a little bit more manageable because it was just me. Like, you can just sit down and write a book by yourself kind of thing. I mean, obviously you can sit down and write a screenplay by yourself, but yeah, the books also sort of felt like a bigger challenge because, there's a lot more words. So I sort of thought, let's do this one first. But then, yeah, that's why I do like having both of those avenues, because it is quite nice having something that's like mine, even though there are so many people involved in getting a book published as well, but it's not quite as many as a film.
Yeah, it's also with the book form, I suppose, that you can be a bit more descriptive and all that.
Totally.
How you're writing. I did a couple of units at uni, and like to do with feature films and stuff like that. I mean, the guy was sort of reading my script. He said, "Are you like a book writer or something?" Like, he was like, "You use this flowery language has got to go." And I was just like, "What?"
Yeah. I think that's definitely one of the hard things for novelists who start writing screenplays, because again, the screenplay is a roadmap for the director, and none of those words on the page are going to, apart from the dialogue, obviously, none of the beautiful flowery language is going to make it onto the screen. So it is more than any, that's a very kill your darlings kind of thing. Like, I usually write the first draft of my screenplays with, to be honest, like a bit of flowery language in them, just because I enjoy doing that. But it always gets stripped out.
Is it a big no-no to not have director notes in there, but say like you're writing it, I guess, how you see it in your head from a certain angle? Is that frowned upon, or would that just get taken out anyway?
Yeah, so you don't want to, you don't want every scene to start with, the camera flies in and close up on, the hybrid writer's face as she sits and talks into a microphone. Like, you don't want to do that level of direction, but you definitely want to get, it's more like getting the vibe across. Like, if we were doing, if this was kind of like a romantic comedy, for example, like you'd describe it in one way, whereas if it was like a horror or a thriller, you'd kind of describe it in a different way, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely a no-no to tell directors what they're doing. So for this film that we're shooting a bit later, I'm working very closely with the directors. And so I have put some camera directions and stuff in there, but that's working in tandem with them.
Yeah. So maybe if they ask for it, but
yeah, totally. And also, if you're a writer director, obviously then you can put that in as well. But generally speaking, as a writer, people don't like it so much when you really dictate exactly how every camera angle has to be.
Fair enough.
Yeah, that is literally their job,
Yeah, no, that's it. So don't be too precious about it.
Yes.
What are some of the not to be missed events, like across the globe and in Australia, that you circulate in, or newbie screenwriters or people looking to get into the industry to be around, to network, I suppose? What are some of the ones that shouldn't be missed?
So in Australia, each state has a screen funding body. In Western Australia, they're called Screen West. In Victoria, they're called Screen Vic or Vic Screen. I think they had a brand change recently. Screen New South Wales, Screen Queen, da 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 da. So every state has its own screen funding body that run events. So I would definitely sign up to the newsletter of whichever state you're in. There's also a national screen funding body called Screen Australia. So get involved with them. There's usually, a few events a year in Western Australia particularly, and that's a really great way to get out there and meet, local filmmakers, producers, directors, all that sort of thing. In terms of globally, I mean, it depends where you want to make films, to be honest. So I lived in LA for a while, and there is a screen event every day of the week on over there because LA is the land built on stories.
The hub.
And again, it's like there's this really fine balance between networking and actually doing the work. Okay, so yes, you do have to network, but you have to be able to back it up with doing the work. So you don't want to be out at events every single night and spruiking yourself and being like, yeah, I'm amazing, and then someone's like, great, well, can you actually deliver? And because you've been out at every night, you have no time to actually write the screenplays. So it's choosing which ones you go to, and it depends very much on what you want to write. It's not like in bookland. So, for kids' books, the Squibby events, like the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, like that's kind of the go-to event that you've got to go to.
So is it like it's a mix then?
Yeah. So Australia definitely has these screen funding bodies, and that's 100% get involved with them. But over in LA, it's, there's Australians in film over there. So if you are Australian and you're heading over there, then they're good people to get in touch with. Yeah, it's just making those connections without being annoying, to be honest. Yeah.
I love that. What are the conversations like though? So is it really just going to chat to people about the current film industry and stuff, not so much talking about you unless you're asked, but you should be prepared when you go there if someone does ask, or rather than
yes,
an annoying would be in your face, I did this, it's me.
Yes. You definitely want to be ready to pitch a project if you're asked to, and it also depends on what the expectations that you've set. So if I have said to someone, if I've emailed them and said, hey, I'm friends with so and so, again, it's like you get the connections. I'm friends with so and so, are you free to catch up for a coffee just to have a general chat? Then I would not turn up to that meeting with 4 projects and just pitch them bam 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 bam. I would wait for the person to be like, so what are you working on? And I'd be like, oh, well, I've got this and this and this, and and often people will be like, oh, cool, well, I know someone who might be a good fit for that, so let me intro you to that person, and that sort of thing. So it's definitely being prepared to talk about yourself, but not going into it thinking you have to sell yourself. It's a really fine line, and honestly, just being able to read the room a little bit. Like often, I'll have coffees with someone and I can tell that they don't want to be there, but they're just doing a favor from someone else, and so I'll just spend the whole coffee talking about their dog because that's what they want to talk about, and that's the kind of fun thing to do. And then like proper pitching is a whole different kettle of fish, where you will literally, you'll walk into a room and someone will be like, right, what do you got for me? And you're just into it. Like there is no small talk, you're just straight into it kind of thing. And again, like that's a whole weird kind of like, can't we talk about the weather first?
Let's break the ice.
Seriously.
But in itself, there's a lot of those events around, is there, for pitching to people in the industry? Like specifically, that's what you go there for, not for the chit chat, but.
Yeah. So if you're going to LA, so you would definitely want to have a bunch of projects under your belt that have been like vetted by other people. So it's not just like you've written 3 screenplays and you think they're terrific. Like you definitely want people who know to read them and be like, okay, I think these are ready to go. And then yes, you use every single connection in your arsenal to see if you can get coffees with people. I mean, if you can get coffees with or cocktails with anyone who works at like a studio or an agency, then that's awesome. And you just kind of go and you see where it takes you. I mean, often you can actually say to people, I've got this project that I think might be a good fit. Can I come and tell you about it? And in that case, yes, 100% they will be expecting to hear about that project. But I have found my experience with LA is that people are actually really, really helpful, and people do want to connect you with other people, particularly if you're not like, as I said, a really annoying person, because everyone wants to make great content, you know? So if you do genuinely have a really great story, then 100% people want to discover you and get your story out there.
Have you found it's the same here in Australia? Like everyone's quite forthcoming and forthgiving?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little different here just because the industry is not as big. And I will admit the difference I found a little bit between Australia and LA is Australia's like people hold stuff a little closer to their chest. It can sometimes be a bit harder to get someone to connect you to, you know, that person, because they're kind of like, but if I connect you, then that means I won't get that connection because there's only, you know, 10 feature films get made a year or something like that. So I try, I'm sure I don't succeed, but I do try to be like generous with my time and connections if I think the person's a good fit. But again, I'm not going to, you know, I'm not going to connect someone that I don't think will be a good fit.
Oh yeah, because you know, that's comes back to you, I suppose. They call you and be like, Kathryn, who's this person?
Well, but it might not even be personal either. It might be like, so you come to me and you're like, I've got this amazing horror project. Can you connect me with your producer? And I'm like, well, my producer doesn't do horror, so there is no point making that connection. But I would totally ask them if they knew anyone who did horror. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, well, you've shared so much already, Kathryn, but do you have any burning tips that for people who, you know, want to break into screenwriting or circulating around anything at all?
I mean, it's probably the same tip everyone gets, but just keep on bashing away at your craft. You will get better and better each day. Yeah, it's something that you will continually learn and grow and develop. And, you know, I thought 3 years ago when I was getting development funding and stuff, I was like, oh my God, this is great. I'm like a really good screenwriter now. And then now, 3 years later, I look back at the stuff I wrote then and I was like, wow, like it was fine, but I'm so much better now. So just keep bashing away at your craft. Start like dipping your toe into networking events. You don't have to go all in all at once, but just like look up your local screen industry and see when their next event is and just go and strike up a conversation with someone. Even if it's about their dog, they will probably remember you more if you asked about their dog than if you start pitching them your idea, to be honest.
Oh gosh, that's hilarious. What about volunteering and things like that at, say, studios or I guess even the events to begin with, or not so much?
So yeah, I don't really know about volunteering at studios. I guess maybe on the East Coast you can do placements and things like that. Probably that would be useful. I've never done that myself. But there are film festivals that you can volunteer at. I don't necessarily know how useful that is. Like if you're wanting to break into screenwriting per se, I don't know that you would necessarily, you might, I'm not saying you won't, but for me personally, I think I would prefer to spend the time honing my craft and then find like one or two kind of really key events that are good. And you know, if you do want to make it as a screenwriter overseas, you have to be prepared to travel frequently.
Can you reside? Well, surely you must be able to. Like, can you reside in Australia but still get your work across there?
Yeah, if you have connections over there, yes. It's really hard to like break into LA without having boots on the ground. So, you know, I still try and go over every year, at least once a year, which obviously, you know, was a bit challenging the last few years. But I work with a writing partner on a lot of projects, and she's based in LA, and I have, you know, a really terrific producer over there that I work with. And if you have an agent in LA, then obviously that's their job. I don't. Incredibly challenging to get an agent, and it's got to be the right person and at the right point in your career. So there's a whole other strategy around that as well. If you have people on the ground there, then yes. Otherwise, it's worth definitely factoring into your life. I'd say trying to go and live in LA for a chunk of time if you want to work overseas. But if you don't care about working in LA, then there's obviously no point.
Yeah. What about like pitching to the streaming services and things like that? That's still all kind of agented, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's more producers. So really what you kind of want is like a great producer, because they will have the connections to the streaming services. Agent, again, yes, if you have a really good agent, but it's tricky. Yeah. And again, Australia and the US is quite different. So Australia, because there's just not as much content that's made here, it is a lot harder to get in front of those people. And you've got to remember they hear, oh God, 100 pitches a week.
Although
Probably.
after the pandemic, I heard like Australia
Oh,
was sort of up there, like with the filming.
Yeah, that is true. That's true. But also after the pandemic, like everyone decided they were going to become a writer. So now every person has a script. I'm not kidding. Friends of mine particularly in LA, like actors, musicians, everyone, they're all like, I have a script. I've got these scripts that I've been working on. I was like, oh man, like I was the script writer. You were the actor. Like, come on.
Oh God, that's hilarious. Have you heard this? Oh, sorry, you finish.
Oh no, I was going to say it is a very competitive industry.
Yep. Yes, I'm finding that across the board with everything, to be honest.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Have you heard? I heard a while ago, were they supposed to be making a Fox Studios here? Did you hear that or no? Some sort of big studios was supposed to be.
I think there's talk of building a studio in WA. I don't know if it's like Fox or whatever, but there is definitely talk of that happening. I think in a couple of years there might be a big studio here, but I suppose yes, watch this space. Yeah. I don't know too much more except what's been in the press about it.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Well, please tell us, what can we expect from Kathryn Lefroy in the future? How's the film going and everything else?
Yeah. Look, everything is bubbling along. I've got another book coming out next year that can't say anything more about it yet. That's in the works. So that's nothing to do with alpacas, though. So no. Yeah, I know.
My daughter's going to be disappointed.
Sorry.
Yeah.
No, the alpacas have had a lovely run, and that series is done. But another middle grade book coming out next year. So the family feature film that I've written, Whale Shark Jack, that'll be filming soon. Again, it's just like the dates keep changing based on cast availability and whale shark season and weather, and there are a lot of factors. So that is happening, but I don't know the exact concrete date still. I'm working on a TV show for an Indian production company, which is really fun. And then I've got a bunch of film projects with a producer in LA, and another couple of projects with producers here. So there's lots of bits and pieces going on. That is the other thing as a screenwriter. You definitely want to have many, many balls in the air, because it does take such a long time to get a film up, and there's absolutely no guarantee that even the best screenplay in the world is going to get turned into a movie. So you definitely want to have multiple projects on the go. Otherwise you will just, if it doesn't work out, it's obviously disappointing. So I like to have at least 4 or 5 projects on the go at the same time, so that if 3 of them fall over, there's still one that I can pin some hope on,
Is that like finished manuscript, finished screenplays out in the wild? Is that what you mean? Or like one's already written, one's off, you're in the middle of writing one's in thought, or at different stages?
Usually different stages. So, at the moment I've got like 3 screenplays that are sort of done, that are just kind of waiting on like the next stage of, whatever that production journey is. And I've got about 2 or 3 that I'm working on with my writing partner in LA. And then another couple that, are just in kind of ideas stage, that I'm like, that's definitely a film rather than a book. So those ones are just like bubbling along in the background.
Well, that all sounds fantastic, and we can't wait for everything to emerge and for us to enjoy it.
Right. Thanks. Me too. Gosh.
But for now, can you tell our listeners where they can discover your books and everything you do, either in stores or online?
Yeah. Well, I think you can buy the books pretty much anywhere where good books are sold. So my middle grade series is the Alex and the Alpacas series, Alex and the Alpacas Save the World, and Alex and the Alpacas Write Again, available from any good bookstore, or online, or Kindle, or whatever e-reader is your choice. Film projects, it's a little bit watch this space at this stage. We will wait and see when I'm not the producer on them. Sometimes I don't know what's going on. So watch this space. But if you do see advertising next year sometime on like the sides of buses about a movie about whale sharks, then that is the one I have written.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time and expertise, Kathryn. It's been fantastic.
Pleasure. A delight.
So there you have it, folks. The sassy, sophisticated screenwriting shares from our very own Kathryn Lefroy. Both my kids and I adore Kathryn's work, so if you aren't familiar, go check out her books and watch out for her family feature film coming soon. Next time on the Hybrid Author Podcast, we have Nat A. Moore and Kathy Taskar chatting to us on presenting to kids. I wish you well in your author adventure this next week. That's it from me. Bye for now.
That's the end for now, authors. I hope you're further forward in your author adventure after listening, and I hope you'll listen next time. Remember to head on over to the Hybrid Author website at www.hybridauthor.com.au to get your free author pass. It's bye for now.